In the rolling hills north of Nashville, there's a 27,000 square foot log cabin with an indoor pool, a shooting range, and a name that means soft spot. She built it at the height of her fame. She almost died before she could fully live in it. And one day, she walked away from it forever. This is the story of Barbara Mandrell's final, the house she called her family's heart, and the price she paid to protect it. Barbara Mandrell wasn't just a country singer. She was a phenomenon. She was the first artist in history to win the Country Music Association's Entertainer of the Year award 2 years in a row. She hosted her own network variety show. She played steel guitar, saxophone, banjo, and half a dozen other instruments, often in the same performance. At a time when country music was still finding its national audience, Barbara Mandrell was already a household name. But behind the rhinestones and the ratings, there was a woman quietly building something most fans never fully understood, a retreat. Not a mansion for show, but a fortress for family. A place to disappear from the noise of stardom. Today, we're going inside that story. The house she built. The tragedy that almost took it all away. And the reason she eventually let it go. Barbara Ann Mandrell was born on Christmas Day, 1948, in Houston, Texas. Her father, Herbie Mandrell, was a police officer and a musician. Her mother, Mary Ellen, taught Barbara to play the accordion and read music before she'd even started first grade. By the time she was 10, the family had moved to Southern California, and young Barbara was already deep into steel guitar lessons and learning saxophone for her school band. Music wasn't a hobby in the Mandrell household. It was the family's language. She made her professional debut at just 11 years old. By 14, she was a seasoned performer, sharing stages with legends like Johnny Cash and Patsy Cline while most kids her age were still figuring out algebra. It's easy, looking back, to assume a childhood like that was glamorous from the start. It wasn't. It was work. Long drives. Late nights. A family betting everything on a little girl's talent and an even bigger dream, that one day, the Mandrell name would mean something in country music. That dream came true faster than almost anyone expected. By 21, Barbara Mandrell was a hit recording artist. Her breakthrough came with ABC Records, and singles like Standing Room Only pushed her into the top 5 on the country charts for the first time. But it was the years that followed that turned her into a superstar. Songs like Sleeping Single in a Double Bed and I Was Country When Country Wasn't Cool became more than hits. They became cultural touchstones, capturing a growing tension between authentic country roots and the genre's crossover ambitions. Then came television. From 1980 to 1981, Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell Sisters aired on NBC, one of the last truly successful variety shows of its kind. Millions of Americans invited Barbara into their living rooms every week, watching her sing, dance, and banter alongside her sisters Louise and Earlene. And then, the honor that changed everything. In 1980 and again in 1981, the Country Music Association named her Entertainer of the Year. No one had ever won it 2 years running. It cemented her as not just a singer, but as one of the most complete performers of her generation. With that fame came money. And with that money came a decision, to build something that reflected everything she'd worked for, and everything she wanted to protect. In 1988, at the absolute peak of her career, Barbara Mandrell began construction on a home unlike anything Nashville had ever seen. She called it final, the medical term for the soft spot on a baby's head. To Barbara, it represented something tender and essential. Her family's soft spot. The place where they were most vulnerable and most protected. It was built north of downtown Nashville, a sprawling log estate designed to be as captivating as the country star herself. Hand-selected timber was brought in from Montana to construct what would become a 33,000 square foot log cabin sitting on 186 acres of rolling Tennessee hillside. Inside were rising wood-beam ceilings, open gathering spaces, multiple kitchens, and a pool that doubled as a dance floor beneath a glass atrium. 20 rooms. 13 bathrooms. 5 fireplaces. And, unexpectedly, an indoor shooting range. A detail that would later become one of the house's most talked about quirks. It cost roughly $6 million to build, and at the time, it was considered the largest log cabin in the United States. For Barbara Mandrell, it wasn't a trophy. It was a retreat. A place where the woman behind the sequins and the spotlight could simply be a wife and a mother. But just as the house was becoming a true home, tragedy nearly ended everything. On September 11, 1984, 4 years before Fontenelle was even completed, Barbara Mandrell and 2 of her children were driving on a Tennessee highway when another vehicle crossed the center line and struck their car head-on. The impact was devastating. Mandrell suffered a broken leg, a shattered ankle, a badly injured knee, and a concussion severe enough to cause temporary brain damage. Her children, thankfully, escaped with only minor injuries. What followed was months of surgery, physical therapy, and a kind of pain most fans never saw. In the years before she published her memoir, the public had little idea just how close Barbara Mandrell had come to losing everything: her mobility, her memory, possibly her life. She has said she genuinely believed she might never sing again. It wasn't until 1990, when she released her best-selling autobiography Get to the Heart, My Story, that the full weight of that accident became public. In it, she described not just the physical agony, but the emotional toll, the fear, the depression, the anger she sometimes turned on the people who loved her most as she fought to reclaim her identity. And yet, she came back. In May of 1985, she returned to recording, and by October of that year, she was back on stage. Songs like Fast Lanes and Country Roads and There's No Love in Tennessee became hits, songs born, quite literally, out of survival. Fontenelle became something different after that. It wasn't just a symbol of success anymore. It became a sanctuary in the truest sense, the place where a woman who had nearly lost everything came home to heal, surrounded by the family she'd almost lost too. 4 years, the estate remained deeply private. Few outsiders ever saw beyond its gates. It was where Barbara Mandrell hosted family, wrote music, and lived a version of life that had almost nothing to do with the industry that made her famous. But even soft spots, eventually, have to close. In 1997, Barbara Mandrell gave her final concert at the Grand Ole Opry House and announced her retirement from touring and recording. It was the end of one era, and, quietly, the beginning of the end for Fontenelle as well. She, her husband Ken Dudnay, and their youngest son Nathaniel eventually made the decision to leave the sprawling estate behind, moving into a considerably smaller, roughly 7,000 square foot home outside Nashville. After years of trying to sell the property privately, Barbara Mandrell put Fontenelle up for auction in 2002. The house that cost $6 million to build was listed at more than $7 million when it hit the auction block. For a woman who had built the house as a refuge from public life, letting it go to the highest bidder must have been its own quiet heartbreak. Fontenelle didn't disappear after the Mandrell family left. It transformed. Investors Dale Morris and Mark Oswald purchased the property in 2002, and by 2010, renovations had turned the once private estate into one of Nashville's premier tourist attractions. It grew to include a hotel, the Nat Shea Hill Winery, and the Fontenelle Records music venue. Visitors could tour the mansion, walking past Mandrell family memorabilia alongside keepsakes from artists like the Eagles, Buck Owens, and Alabama. For over a decade, fans could walk through the very rooms where Barbara Mandrell raised her children and rebuilt her life after that devastating crash, an intimate, almost unheard-of level of access to a country legend's private world. In February 2019, the property closed its doors and sold once again, this time to a Chicago-based investment group, Blue Road Ventures, for $14.5 million, with plans to redevelop portions of the land. By 2022, the estate had been split into 6 separate parcels and sent back to auction, including the main mansion and amphitheater, a smaller log home built for the Mandrell family before Fontenelle's construction, and land once used for a distillery and winery. The property has changed hands, changed purpose, and changed shape many times since Barbara Mandrell first broke ground in 1988. But its name and its story have never changed. In 2026, Fontenelle officially reopened to the public once again, giving a new generation of visitors the chance to walk through what was once considered the largest log cabin in America, and to feel, even briefly, what it might have meant to call a place like that home. In 2009, Barbara Mandrell was formally inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, cementing a legacy built not just on chart-topping records, but on resilience, a career interrupted by near tragedy and rebuilt through sheer determination. Barbara Mandrell built Fontenelle to be a soft spot, a place of protection, warmth, and belonging, at a time when her life was defined by spotlights and stages. But real life doesn't ask permission before it intrudes. A car crash on a Tennessee highway nearly took away her voice, her mobility, and her family in a single moment. And somehow, that same house, built for celebration, became the place where she quietly, painfully, learned how to heal. She eventually let it go. Not because she stopped loving it, but perhaps because home was never really about the walls, the timber, or the 27,000 square feet. It was about who stood inside them with her. Fintnell still stands today, north of Nashville, open once again to strangers who will never fully know what those rooms witnessed. But for anyone who understands the story behind them, it's not just a log cabin. It's a monument to survival, and to a woman who understood, better than most, what it truly means to come home.